when one person here faces them, we need to face them together. So change starts with educating people, and so I hope this event will be a small step in creating awareness about the issues of diversity and inclusion here on our campus. So before we get started with the student presentations later tonight, we wanted to give you kind of a frame of reference for understanding their experiences. So we're going to start with a TED Talk and then some research as well. So first we're going to watch a TED Talk entitled Colorblind or Color Brave by Melody Hobson, who's the president of Ariel Investments. So she talks about some of her experiences as a Black woman and encourages us to have open conversations about race. She says that talking about race can often be uncomfortable and awkward, but they're conversations we need to have. So we hope this talk will help you be open to having those conversations and understandings later tonight.
So it's 2006. My friend Harold Ford calls me. He's running for U.S. Senate in Tennessee. And he says, Melody, I desperately need some national press. Do you have any ideas? So I had an idea. I called a friend who was in New York at one of the most successful media companies in the world. And she said, why don't we host an editorial board lunch for Harold? You come with him. Harold and I arrive in New York. We are in our best suits. We look like shiny new pennies. And we get to the receptionist and we say, we're here for the lunch. She motions for us to follow her. We walk through a series of corridors, and all of a sudden we find ourselves in a stark room, at which point she looks at us and she says, where are your uniforms? Just as this happens, my friend rushes in. The blood drains from her face. There are literally no words, right? And I look at her and I say, now, don't you think we need more than one Black person in the U.S. Senate? Now, Harold and I, we still laugh about that story. And in many ways, the moment caught me off guard. But deep, deep down inside, I actually wasn't surprised. And I wasn't surprised because of something my mother taught me about 30 years before. You see, my mother was ruthlessly realistic. I remember one day coming home from a birthday party where I was the only Black kid invited, and instead of asking me the normal motherly questions like, did you have fun, or how was the cake, my mother looked at me and she said, how did they treat you? I was 7. I did not understand. I mean, why would anyone treat me differently? But she knew. And she looked me right in the eye and she said, they will not always treat you well. Now, race is one of those topics in America that makes people extraordinarily uncomfortable. You bring it up at a dinner party or in a workplace environment, it is literally the conversational equivalent of touching the third rail. There is shock, followed by a long silence. And even coming here today, I told some friends and colleagues that I plan to talk about race, and they warned me. They told me, don't do it. There'd be huge risks in me talking about this topic. That people might think I'm a militant Black woman and I would ruin my career. And I have to tell you, I actually for a moment was a bit afraid. Then I realized the first step to solving any problem is to not hide from it. And the first step to any form of action is awareness. And so I decided to actually talk about race. And I decided that if I came here and shared with you some of my experiences, then maybe we could all be a little less anxious and a little more bold in our conversations about race. Now, I know there are people out there who will say that the election of Barack Obama meant that it was the end of racial discrimination for all eternity, right? But I work in the investment business, and we have a saying, the numbers do not lie. And here, there are significant, quantifiable racial disparities that cannot be ignored in household wealth, household income, job opportunities, healthcare. One example from corporate America. Even though white men make up just 30% of the US population, they hold 70% of all corporate board seats. Of this Fortune 250, there are only 7 CEOs that are minorities. And of the thousands of publicly traded companies today, thousands, only 2 are chaired by Black women. And you're looking at one of them, the same one who not too long ago was nearly mistaken for kitchen help. So that is a fact. Now, I have this thought experience that I play with myself, experiment. And I say, imagine if I walked you into a room and it was of a major corporation like ExxonMobil, and every single person around the boardroom were Black, you would think that were weird. But if I walked you into a Fortune 500 company and every around the table is a white male, when will it be that we think that's weird too? And I know how we got here. I know how we got here. You know, there was institutionalized and one time legalized discrimination in our country. There's no question about it. But I still, as I sort of grapple with this issue, my mother's question hangs in the air for me. How did they treat you? Now, I do not raise this issue to complain or in any way elicit any kind of sympathy. I have succeeded in my life beyond my wildest expectations. And I've been treated well by people of all races more often than I have not. I tell the uniform story because it happened. I cite those statistics around corporate board diversity because they are real. And I stand here today talking about this issue of racial discrimination because I believe it threatens to rob another generation of all the opportunities that all of us want for all of our children, no matter what their color or where they come from. And I think it also threatens to hold back businesses. You see, researchers have coined this term color blindness to describe a learned behavior where we pretend that we don't notice race. If you happen to be surrounded by a bunch of people who look like you, that's purely accidental. Now, color blindness, in my view, doesn't mean that there's no racial discrimination and there's fairness. It doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't ensure it. In my view, color blindness is very dangerous because it means we're ignoring the problem. There was a corporate study that said that instead of avoiding race, the really smart corporations actually deal with it head on. They actually recognize that embracing diversity means recognizing all races, including the majority one. But I'll be the first one to tell you, this subject matter can be hard, awkward, uncomfortable, but that's kind of the point. In the spirit of debunking racial stereotypes, the one that Black people don't like to swim, I'm going to tell you how much I love to swim. I love to swim so much that as an adult, I swim with a coach. And one day my coach had me do a drill where I had to swim to one end of a 25-meter pool without taking a breath. And every single time I failed, I had to start over. And I failed a lot. By the end, I got it, but I got out of the pool, I was exasperated and tired and annoyed. And I said, why are we doing breath-holding exercises? And my coach looked at me and he said, Melody, that was not a breath-holding exercise. That drill was to make you comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's how most of us spend our days. If we can learn to deal with our discomfort and just relax into it, we'll have a better life. So I think it's time for us to be comfortable with the uncomfortable conversation about race. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, male, female, all of us. If we truly believe in equal rights and equal opportunity in America, I think we have to have real conversations about this issue. We cannot afford to be colorblind. We have to be color brave. We have to be willing, as teachers and parents and entrepreneurs and scientists, we have to be willing to have proactive conversations about race with honesty and understanding and courage. Not because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the smart thing to do. Because our businesses and our products and our science, our research, all of that will be better with greater diversity. Now, my favorite example of color bravery is a guy named John Skipper. He runs ESPN. He's a North Carolina native, quintessential Southern gentleman, white. He joined ESPN, which already had a culture of inclusion and diversity, but he took it up a notch. He demanded that every open position have a diverse slate of candidates. Now, he says the senior people in the beginning bristled, and they would come to him and say, do you want me to hire the minority, or do you want me to hire the best person for the job? And Skipper says his answers were always the same: yes. And by saying yes to diversity, I honestly believe that ESPN is the most valuable cable franchise in the world. I think that's a part of the secret sauce. Now, I can tell you in my own industry, at Ariel Investments, we actually view our diversity as a competitive advantage. And that advantage can extend way beyond business. There's a guy named Scott Page at the University of Michigan. He's the first person to develop a mathematical calculation for diversity. He says if you're trying to solve a really hard problem, really hard, then you should have a diverse group of people, including those with diverse intellects. The example that he gives is the smallpox epidemic. When it was ravaging Europe, they brought together all these scientists and they were stumped. And the beginnings of the cure to the disease came from the most unlikely source, a dairy farmer. A dairy farmer who noticed that the milkmaids were not getting smallpox. And the smallpox vaccination is bovine-based because of that dairy farmer. Now I'm sure you're sitting here and you're saying, I don't run a cable company, I don't run an investment firm, I am not a dairy farmer, what can I do? And I'm telling you, you can be color brave. If you're a part of a hiring process or an admissions process, you can be color brave. If you are trying to solve a really hard problem, you can speak up and be color brave. Now, I know people will say, but that doesn't add up to a lot. But I'm actually asking you to do something really simple. Observe your environment. At work, at school, at home. I'm asking you to look at the people around you purposefully and intentionally. Invite people into your life who don't look like you, don't think like you, don't act like you, don't come from where you come from. And you might find that they will challenge your assumptions and make you grow as a person. You might get powerful new insights from these individuals. Or, like my husband, who happens to be white, you might learn that black people, men, women, children, we use body lotion every single day. Now, I also think that this is very important so that the next generation really understands that this progress will help them because they're expecting us to be great role models. And I told you my mother, she was ruthlessly realistic. She was an unbelievable role model. She was the kind of person who got to be the way she was because she was a single mom with 6 kids in Chicago. She was in the real estate business where she worked extraordinarily hard, but oftentimes had a hard time making ends meet. And that meant sometimes we got our phone disconnected, or our lights turned off, or we got evicted. And when we got evicted, sometimes we lived in these small apartments that she owned, sometimes in only 1 or 2 rooms because they weren't completed. And we would heat our bathwater on hot plates. But she never gave up hope, ever. And she never allowed us to give up hope either. This brutal pragmatism that she had, I mean, I was 4 and she told me, Mommy is Santa. She was this brutal pragmatism. She taught me so many lessons, but the most important lesson was that every single day she told me, Melody, you can be anything, anything. And because of those words, I would wake up at the crack of dawn, and because of those words, I would love school more than anything, and because of those words, when I was on a bus going to school, I dreamed the biggest dreams. And it's because of those words that I stand here right now, full of passion, asking you to be brave for the kids who are dreaming those dreams today. You see, I want them to look at a CEO on television and say, I can be like her, or he looks like me. And I want them to know that anything is possible, that they can achieve the highest level that they ever imagined, that they will be welcome in any corporate boardroom, or they can lead any company. You see this idea of being the land of the free and the home of the brave? It's woven into the fabric of America. America, when we have a challenge, we take it head on. We don't shrink away from it. We take a stand. We show courage. So right now, what I'm asking you to do, I'm asking you to show courage. I'm asking you to be bold. As business leaders, I'm asking you not to leave anything on the table. As citizens, I'm asking you not to leave any child behind. I'm asking you not to be colorblind, but to be color brave, so that every child knows that their future matters and their dreams are possible. Thank you.
Okay, so before we get to the students' presentations, we wanted to provide some research to kind of substantiate the stories they're going to share and provide some support for the stories that they have about their experiences here at TCU specifically. So for my departmental honors thesis in sociology, I looked at how stereotype threat impacts the experiences of talked about that already, how there are conditions for these stereotypes to exist about the weaker academic abilities of students of color, but this really affects their experience in the classroom because they're not able to work with other students well, people don't trust them, people doubt their ability to succeed in their majors, and so it impacts how they think of themselves as well. And then the stereotype of the angry black woman, so this idea that when black women share their opinions and perspectives, people are going to think of them as angry, and so this relates back to academic stereotypes because when they're in the classroom, they might be afraid to share their opinion or share an idea they have, which makes their voice silenced in the classroom and unheard because they're afraid of what other people are going to think if they share their opinion on a specific subject. And then finally, the assumption that students of color don't belong here at TCU or aren't actual students. So some of these students shared stories about how their identity was questioned by other students, by staff members here at TCU because they don't look like the typical TCU student. Since the majority of our students are white, some of them are questioned even when they're on this campus and they do belong, but it makes them feel like they don't when people don't trust their identity as a TCU student. So these are some of the implications I found from the existence of these stereotypes. So first looking at how it impacts the classroom dynamics and performance. So these students of color have a feeling of loneliness and discomfort in the classroom because they're often the only student of color or one of few students of color in their classes, which doesn't give them anybody to relate to or work with, and so it makes them feel like they're alone in these environments. Next is the pressure to represent a group. So because they're often the only student of color in the room, they feel like they have to perform, and their performance relates back to their entire group. So because they know that these stereotypes exist about their academic abilities, when they don't do well, people assume that all students like them don't perform well academically, and so there's that increased pressure to do well so that other people will start thinking well of their entire racial group. It also relates back to conversations that happen in the classroom. So if it's a class concerning African American history or Latino history, people assume that they're going to be the expert on that subject because they're part of that group, and so it creates that increased pressure to represent their group well and have a lot of knowledge about their history that other students aren't necessarily expected to have about their own groups. And then finally, the fear of underperformance and participation. So because these stereotypes about their academic abilities exist, they're afraid that if they don't perform well and succeed well in their courses, that people are going to assume that these stereotypes are correct and they're just going to confirm the ideas that other people hold of them. And so a lot of times that keeps them from participating fully in class or working well in groups because they have a hard time knowing that what they do is going to confirm these stereotypes that other people hold of them, and so it really holds them back in these academic environments. And then this was something that hadn't really been looked at before with stereotype threat, but it also has effects on social life. So because so many times they're the only student of color in these classrooms, when they go out into their social life, they form more homogeneous social groups because they really seek that comfort and understanding that they can't find in the classroom. So they're often surrounded by people who aren't like them academically, and so outside of academics, they want to be with people who understand their experience and can relate to what they're going through. And then there's also the pressure of the status quo. So a lot of that comes from the creation of these homogeneous groups because we automatically associate with people who look like us and can share our experiences. But there's also this campus culture that if you want to join a group with people who don't look like you, people kind of question your intentions or what you're doing because it's not what's typical. because oftentimes they're the only student of color in the room. The classroom isn't a place where they feel safe or accepted or comfortable. So it's important for them to have those physical spaces outside of the classroom where they can feel understood and comfortable on a campus that is predominantly white. So they need to find that comfort elsewhere because the classroom doesn't provide that space on a predominantly white campus. So now that we've shared some information on the importance of having conversations about race and what it's like to be a student of color here on campus, we're going to have some students come up and share stories about their experiences as students of color here at TCU. So just again, please be respectful of the experiences they're sharing and try to understand their stories from their perspectives. So first, we have
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Tyler. I'm going to share an anecdote about one particular experience that I had here at TCU. But before I did that, I thought I'd talk a little bit about where I'm from. I'm from El Paso, Texas, which is about 8.5 hours west of here. It's right on the U.S.-Mexico border. El Paso's population is overwhelmingly Hispanic, about 85%. I say that to illustrate the fact that my whole life I've gone to school and been in classes with teachers that look like me, classmates that look like me, and could share my experiences. So, as you can imagine, when I was planning to go to college in a totally different part of Texas, my parents had a lot of advice for me. Stay true to yourself, be safe, know your limits. But my dad left me with something that really stuck with me because at the time I thought it was kind of funny and a little bit strange. He told me, son, this is a white man's world. And that was it. So my dad was getting at this idea that we talk about in classes that discuss race. That's social capital. Social capital is a concept that says underrepresented groups or groups in society that aren't the dominant groups, such as black students, Latino students, female students in some instances, LGBTQ students, have to learn how to navigate the structures of power and different institutions in order to succeed in the way that the dominant group does. So an example is learning how to navigate a university when you're a first-generation college student. Or it's also the notion that a lot of business deals are made on the golf course. So this idea that there's this old boys club that a lot of older white men are a part of, that's where a lot of important business or political decisions are made. So I hate to break it to you, but it's not my grandpa who's doing the golfing. That's sort of the idea. So the more I ventured outside of my bubble in El Paso, the more I grew to understand what exactly it was that my dad was trying to get at. So after arriving here at TCU, I soon discovered that in my classrooms, I was often the only student of color. In classes where there were 20 students or less, this felt a lot more obvious. So when I was in this position, I felt this need to overperform. So while the rest of the students might have been texting or online shopping, I felt the need to be in the front row, to be very attentive, and to be participating more than my white counterparts were. Now, being the only student of color in the classroom, I also felt the need to represent my people well. Like, oh, I can't let my people down. I'm the only one of my kind in this classroom. And this also amplified my fear of failure. So if I fail as the only brown student in this class, what is that going to say about me? What is that going to make these other students or maybe this professor think? So these are the types of ways that I was feeling when I was inside the classroom. And while I felt that, this became a routine feeling inside the classroom, I'd really yet to experience this outside the classroom until one night, the anecdote that I'm going to share is one night when I was doing laundry in my freshman dorm room. It was around 11 p.m. on a Saturday, and as I was walking from my room to the laundry room, a young woman stopped me from behind and she called out to me. She said, "Excuse me." So I turned around to face her. And at this point, I'd been living in my dorm about 3 months or so, and I turned around to face the young lady, and it was a young lady who I recognized. I had seen her a few times in my dorm room, or in my dorm. She was an RA, and when I faced her, she asked me what I was doing. So I told her, "Oh, I'm just doing some laundry," and after that, I went back to go do my laundry, but then she stopped me again, and she said, "That's only for students. you're visiting someone here, so when you're on campus, you need to be escorted by someone on campus. And so at this point, I was really confused, and I told her, one, I'm not visiting anybody, and two, I am a student here. I go to school here. My name is Tyler. I'm studying engineering. And then she looked at me with a smirk, and she said, no, you don't. And at this point, I was really annoyed and bothered, so I said, yes, I do. I insisted, and then I took her to my dorm room, and I said, this is my door, and it had a name tag that had my name on it, and I pulled out my ID and said, here's my ID, not just my door. So finally, she relented, and she walked away, I walked away. I can remember being annoyed that night and recounting that story to my friends that year. So as I was thinking about that event, I wondered why it was that I had been questioned if I was a student here, and I wondered if other students had gotten that sort of similar treatment. And I started to think that perhaps this young lady asked me this question because maybe the only people that she recognized that looked like me on campus were the custodian women or the men who did the landscaping. And that made me think, well, I haven't really heard of any other students who felt this way, and through the years, I've recognized, or I've heard from my fellow Latino students that this is something that's not too uncommon. But I've never heard of this happening to a white student, and I started thinking, well, maybe if my skin was whiter, my hair was lighter, and I wore a fraternity t-shirt, maybe she wouldn't have asked me that. The point I'm trying to get at is that I felt out of place, I felt very alienated, and I felt embarrassed because this is a place where I had lived for a few months, and I felt the need to have to justify me living there, and I had to explain it to this woman who I'd seen more than a couple times. So all this to say, so I don't share this anecdote to get sympathy or to bash on that girl, but I share this anecdote because it impacted me to the point where I wanted to become a larger part, or just part of a discussion about race relations here at TCU, and it impacted me. Shortly thereafter, I met my mentor, who shared a lot of my experiences and who saw that this experience impacted me, and she encouraged me to get into comparative race and ethnic studies class. And after I got into this class, I realized just how important this topic was to not just me, but to a whole larger community here at TCU. So I thank you for listening to my story, and I appreciate you wanting to be a part of this discussion as well.
Before I jump into that, I want to give you a quick overview of what Panhellenic is for those of you who don't know. So Panhellenic recruitment is, I'm going to begin with what Panhellenic is. Panhellenic is the nickname for the organization National Panhellenic Council. Those are a group of 26 Greek organizations that, with 13 of which we have on campus. These organizations are filled by many women, and I've heard a statistic recently that 50% of TCU's campus is Greek. Of that 50%, 55% of those are Panhellenic women. So it's fair to say that as the TCU community, we've seen Panhellenic women around, at least one. Next is the recruitment part of it. Here at TCU, recruitment is a 7-day, 4-round process where you get to talk to women for various amounts of time the week before school starts. Has anyone seen that video of those people in that doorway and they're bouncing and clapping and yelling? Sorry to say, that's real life. That happens every year on campus, and we somehow think it's normal. But what's more important than that video and the bouncing and clapping is the conversations that you're having. Some of these conversations can last 5 minutes. And in that 5-minute conversation, that determines your Greek life and your Greek experience for the rest of your time here at TCU and beyond. And during those 5 minutes, you can imagine the stress that you're under. You are trying to say the right things. You have the day before, months before, you're trying to figure out, am I wearing the right things? And all these questions keep going through your mind as you're going through the conversations and afterwards. But for some groups, there's a few more questions that are asked. Imagine this. Imagine it's the first day, round 1, you walk into a room, you somehow make it through the bouncing and clapping mentally, you sit down, you look around, and there's 200 women in this room. All of them are blonde. There's a few brunettes in there, but like you can see a common theme that all of them are blonde. How does that make you feel? You walk in and you're like, wow, this is kind of weird, but I can get through this. Like, I've been through this situation before, I can do this. And all blonde, a few brunettes. You're a black woman, or a Hispanic woman, or an Asian woman. How does that make you feel? That you're one of 200 women. In that moment, it becomes obvious that they're looking for a certain type, and you can never hit that. As a brunette, you can dye your hair, but I can't dye my skin, so I guess I'm out. Those are questions you have to ask. You're the ultimate outsider in that moment, and your stress goes to another level. Questions like, is it because I'm black that I didn't get invited to the house the next day? Am I comfortable being the only non-white person in the room? Will I be comfortable in this organization if there's no one that looks like me? These are questions that we are asking 18-year-olds to answer before they even step foot on campus. At age 18, some people don't even know what they want to do with the rest of their life, but they have to ask these tough questions. And that's the first instinct and the first thing that they get to see when they walk on campus for many of these women. For me, I had to realize that these hard questions and make a decision what that means for me moving forward. In my case, I realized at that point that I wasn't ready to feel so exposed. I wasn't ready to go into a group of 200 women and be comfortable in my own skin. So I had to take a step back and realize, you know what? I am a black woman and I'm proud to be that. If they don't want that in my group, if they're looking for something else that I can never fit into, that's just gonna be something that they have to get over because they won't get me. And then with that realization and that self-reflection, I went back for round 2. Crazy, I know, I went back for more, but I did, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Through my organization, I was able to meet my lifelong friends and join and have leadership positions. I served as CRA for 34 great residents, and it was a good time. But in the back of my mind, those questions still ring true. Did I get this leadership position because they were looking for more diversity in the group? Did I not get it because they weren't looking for someone to look like me? These are all questions that I had to ask. My 18-year-old self had to answer these questions, but they're going to be questions that extend beyond sorority recruitment. Questions that I'm going to ask when I'm 28 or 38 or 48 are just going to be in the back of my mind with every decision that I make. Every job that I apply for, every relationship that falls through, those are always going to be in the back of my mind. Now I have a question back. Why? Why do people of color have to question their achievements in front of other people? Why do people of color have to wonder if race played a role in how they were treated in that environment? I started this talk talking about what pandemic recruitment is, but I ended it on a different level. What does this mean for the future? Are we doing anything to make it change? Are we? And if you're not, why not?
Hello, my name is Dominique Cook, and I am a sophomore communication studies major with a minor in political science. Among many other amazing things, I am also the president and founder of Women of Empowerment. So I say this before I begin. If you are a woman of color sitting in this room and you're looking for a safe space to express yourself and be yourself, then my organization is the one for you. It is said that the average human, regardless of race or gender, experiences up to 27 emotions that intertwine them. Frogs first, we enter the Amon G. Carter Stadium as hopeful and eager freshmen ready to take TCU by storm. We rush to grab seats as we wait to hear a warm welcome from Chancellor Bushini. Sitting next to a white guy, my leg briefly rubs up against his, and in a panic, and in some way he thinks that my melanin may somehow rub off on him. He wipes his leg off and doesn't even look at me. Confused. Following the Chancellor's assembly, myself along with other students that lived on my floor, met with the RA and discussed our goals for the school year. We started off by doing a brief activity. Each student was asked to take a sticky note, write down one question that we had about college life, and anonymously drop it in a bucket. Following that, we were then asked to pull a question, brief them, and then discuss it with the RA. Already confused about what had happened earlier, I decided not to participate. Questions vary from, so how do you use the washer, to what do I do if I run out of nail swipes? You know, typical. It's my turn to pull a question, and it reads, I'm scared of racism and Donald Trump supporters. A young lady turns my direction and says, well, if you're scared of racism and Donald Trump supporters, maybe you shouldn't be in Texas. Annoyed. Mid-semester, roughly 4 o'clock on Friday morning, I am in my cramped twin bed, snoring up a storm. I mean, I'm going in. That I get enough rest to be able to function for my 8 a.m. class. When out of nowhere, I hear banging on my door. Thinking that it must be somebody who's clearly out of their mind, I roll over and go back to sleep. About 5 minutes later, there's another banging on my door. 2 minutes of explaining to them that their friend Gregory did not stay here. One of them states, and I quote, "Let's leave. We don't want to make the black girl mad." We don't want to make the black girl mad. That stuff. Not because I believed it, but because I was scared of being seen as the typical angry black girl. Most students' fears about college line with what social settings they'll fit into or what clubs they'll join. My fear about college, being an African-American woman at a predominantly white institution and finding my voice despite the stereotypes. In classes where I'm the only person of color and I unknowingly become the spokesperson for my entire race, I am forced to criticize and attack every negative connotation surrounding African Americans. In classes where I speak from a place of passion, I am told to chill or calm down, or I'm cut off in the middle of saying something valuable. In the very same classes where students compare the Black Lives Matter movement to the Ebola epidemic, or where students state that black men asked to be shot at by the police, I refused to stand by idly when I had the opportunity to educate someone. Am I not allowed to be angry or to feel emotion? Angry, definition, having a strong feeling of or showing annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. Briefly, I want to do an activity with y'all. Raise your hand if you would be happy, excited, elated if your professor marked you absent because you changed your hair. No? Didn't move anybody not once? Okay, well let's try this. Raise your hand if your peers constantly refer to your ancestors as colored. I'm not gonna cry. I was terrified of responding in situations like these out of fear that the educational moment that I wanted to have with people would either fall on deaf ears or would be taken as misplaced aggression. These aren't situations that are exclusive to just me. My fellow black peers had their own struggle with ignorance and stereotypes here at TCU. We should not silence our voices out of fear of stepping on someone's toes. To every black woman sitting in this room who has felt bound by the stereotypes that have been placed on you, speak up. Speak up to educate. Speak up to advocate. Speak up because you have that right. As a valuable member of the TCU community, as a student, as a human being, you have the right to feel whatever you want to feel. You are entitled to your emotions, and your passion shouldn't intimidate anyone. In the angry black woman narrative, we have strong opinions, but we are not angry. We have a voice, but we are not angry. We are passionate, but we are not angry. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Thomas. I'm a junior, economics major, philosophy, and sociology minor. I'm not gonna lie, y'all dropped a phone call. Extremely passionate about this one. Coming to TCU, it taught me. I'm a black man. Why do you say true? Well, freshman year, I remember coming to this institution, going through frog camp, orientation, all the things especially looking forward to. And in my eyes, I have a typical college dream. I want to go, have those great 4 years of my life, gain that 15 pounds that freshman year. I want to do everything everybody else wants to do. I want to make straight A's, I want to find a woman. I want to do it all. But nah, not that. I'm a black man, a predominantly white institution. Freshman year, I go out for these 4 years. They're these best 4 years of my life. I get invited to this frat party. I can't remember the fraternity name, but we get invited. Me and my boys go out. We said we're going to go out, have a good time, get some shawties, get some drinks. It'll be great. Invited to this party. We hit the streets. We hit Uber, then we hit the streets. We go to this house, right? And my boy, he's the taller in the group. You know, he walks into the door. He's like, yo, 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 my name is da-da-da-da. He walks in, regular party, right? And in the background, I can hear him say, you know, hey, man, tell the pledges. Go pick up the black guy. Go kick him out. Who they tell him? So what do? They come to the door, the drunkest white guy, comes to the door, it's like, hey man, I'm sorry to tell you, but you know, we're just at capacity. We gotta let you go. And I'm like, nah, man, we hear y'all back there, you know? And my one friend, he crazy from Carter, he like, nah, man, we heard you, nah. We in this party, we came all over this party. We got invited. And like, nah, man, chill out. Get off this property. This is our property, right? And one dude gets really, really mad. He's like, yeah, man, get out. Throws a bottle at his head. My boy gets angry. He goes to he rushes to the door. He starts hitting. They push us out. I'm like, chill, man, chill. We get off the property. That's how the night goes. Can't go to frat parties. Not allowed there. This is the Trump election too, it's 2016. So everybody's hyped, everybody's ready, who's gonna be president. As I'm walking through my dorm, this is in Sherby's dorm, it's the 3rd floor, I'll never forget it. I'm walking upstairs, I'm going to meet one of my homeboys, and on the whiteboard to the right of the wall it says, you should bring back the 3/5 law. That's what it says. For anybody who doesn't know, the 3/5 law is a law that was created for black people when we finally got a little bit of voting rights. We were only counting for 3/5 of the land. That's what it said. The joking man. My own door. Shit some shirt is what they call it. It's shit show. So why, Trey? Why did you go to an institution? Why didn't you go to HBCU? Why didn't you go to Georgetown? You know, I got accepted there too. Why this school? I'll tell you why. TCU has a problem and has had a problem for years. And that is the problem of diversity. So what do? Well, what typical institutions do. They go and reach out to people of color. They go out and recruit, here, there, come here. But they end up running into the first problem, which is, well, people of color can't afford to get here. You know, as educated as we are, we can't afford to get here. So what do? They create a program. TCU has a program called the Community Scholars Program. I am one of those students. So they go to these places with color, right? And they meet and greet you, they take how great it's going to be, we're going to university, college is going to be this, it's going to be that. They introduce you to people, they hand you a $250,000 check. So kids, they got no money, sooner or later, you know, sign that check. So now I'm here. That's what I'm here. As a community scholar student, you know, we're taught this image of what college is supposed to be. We're taught that, you know, there'll be support, that there'll be people there for you. Always come back to joggers. We're your family. But throughout the entire week, it's hard to find that family. I sit in classrooms where I'm a white person, feeling my own race. I deal with racism on the daily, especially my freshman year. My microaggressions. White people don't want to look at me. I try to say, hey guy, you know, somebody I met in the classroom with them, he does this right here. So I realized, after a while, you know, after that freshman year, I'm a black man. I'm a black man. Thank you.
Wow. Hi. For those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Casey Bonilla. I'm a junior communication studies major, music minor. And I'm from Plano, Texas. I'll get into that a little bit later. But I want everyone to remember about before even coming to TCU, getting that purple acceptance packet. And like being really excited about seeing your acceptance letter, the letter from the student body president at the time. Now, you were really excited about all that, but I was excited about the Frog Camp flyer. I was more than ready to go ahead and be more social and be just putting myself out there at TCU. So after Frog Camp, I loved it, and then I did orientation after, which is the unconventional way to do it, but I'm a very unconventional person, so I had to do it the wrong way. Went to orientation, and I liked that a lot too. And then when I came back on campus, we did Frogs First and Connections, and I liked those a lot too. So being a first generation student, I was always going in blindly in everything that I'm doing here on campus. I didn't just want to dip my toes in the water. I wanted to cannonball into the pool and make sure that I wasn't drowning. So my first year here at TCU, I got into the Housing Orientation Liaison Program, Frogs First, and Connections. And by sophomore year, I got into the Frog Camp program as work group. So I am a pretty welcomed person in the FYE or first year experience program. I have a lot of mentors
strange world that is FYE, but it wasn't always that easy. As I said earlier, I'm from Plano, Texas, and if you don't know where that is, it's near Dallas, and it is the definition of like white suburbia. Everything looks the same. It's kind of crazy. But at high school, I was never really anybody, or I wasn't someone who got ever like marginalized or got picked on because of my race, because I was a non-threatening Latina. Because for other people, I sound white, I act white. So technically, I am white on the inside, which is what a lot of friends would say to my face. Looking back at that now, I know that that's not very not racist thing to do, but back then, I honestly didn't know what that meant. I got a huge wake-up call at TCU one day when I was walking to class, and a couple of boys in a big pickup truck rolled down their windows and screamed, "Build that wall," as I was going to class. So, from that day forward, I knew, after I'd gotten those acceptances to all of my programs, I knew that I needed to make a difference in those programs. So, when I got accepted, most people told me to go ahead and do these programs to diversify the program, which to me at first I thought was more of an insult. I'm like, don't you guys want me not just because of my race, but because like of my personality? A lot of people, whenever they see me or whenever they describe me to other people, they like to say that I'm a very energetic person, full of like a bunch of bubbly energy. One of my teachers used to tell me they wish they would bottle my energy up and sell it on eBay because they would make a fortune. So that was a very nice compliment for like a 12-year-old. But yeah. But I always made sure that my personality was really big because I realized that if it wasn't as big as it is today, I wouldn't be heard. So, whenever people don't ever choose me because of this big personality that I've created, I feel as though I am only chosen because of this one superficial thing that I am very, very proud of, but it's not just who I am. But growing up and going to these 3 years at TCU, I realized that it wasn't just one or the other. It was because I was the perfect combination of embracing both of those things. So, being who I am, both in my huge personality and comfortable in my skin, allowed me to become somebody who's made a huge change, I hope, in a lot of the programs that I've been involved in. I personally think that small 18-year-old hopeful Casey will be really, really proud of like the 21-year-old Casey who's out there, putting herself out there today.
Can we just get another round of applause for We're going to do a Q&A discussion session in a minute, but first, we really just want to encourage you to keep having these conversations. This shouldn't be
I like telling stories, and that's always really fun for me, but I always like listening to stories too. So getting myself being educated on everyone else's experience, I think was going to be something that was really beneficial for me in the long run.
Yeah, me personally, I just feel like as a community scholar, you get this full ride scholarship, and everyone thinks you're just here happy-go-lucky because you have this scholarship institution, and like you don't face problems every day, like you don't get the microaggressions, and so I speak out all the time about like a lot of different things, but I want to use this one to speak out and say, hey, we have problems too, and not just us, athletes as well, anybody that has like a full ride to right institution, like we go through things, it's tough for us as well, on top of trying to meet the criteria, so I feel like that voice needs to be heard.
Any other questions?
What prevented you from recording?
I did record. At the end of the day, I mean, we talked to, like, I remember my Shirley, I talked to him about it, and he's like, we just wipe it off the board, don't worry about it, you know, and then, you know, we talk to the people, like, leisure and thing like that, like, what happened to, like, the event that happened, the hitting and following the head, like, well, there's a proof of it, I mean, you own the property, I mean, you don't really can't do anything about it, you know, this and that, and so there's really not much that can happen. Talk to TCU, and they're like, well, that's on campus, we can't get involved, so, I mean, it's just like, you get those privileges, and I try to report it, but I mean, things happen.
For me, a lot of the things that I experienced were racially charged comments in the classroom. And so if professors aren't speaking up and correcting these students, and it's like, well, if I go and tell somebody, I might get that same response. I'm a person who likes to process a lot of things, so then after things happen, I go straight to Jarvis and I sit down and I talk about it. But I just thought that reporting it wouldn't really change much, because I would still, if it wasn't them, then it was going to be someone else who would come to me with the same thing.
Yeah, I had a similar experience where it was the first class I ever took at TCU, and the class discussion got onto President Trump's wall, and a couple of white students said, oh, well, why don't you just put sniper rifles on the wall so when people are trying to jump over you, just shoot them. And so then in that class, the professor didn't say anything, and he just let the conversation keep on going. So I think I sort of shared that sentiment that the professor didn't find anything wrong with that, or didn't think he should say something, then what would an RA, a different RA, or the hall director say if, you know, and I also thought, what if, you know, they didn't believe me, or what if they just brushed it off or something?
I honestly didn't know you could record it, so that's why I did it. I was also like not really aware that that was ever going to happen to me in real life. So I was more like shell shocked and stunned when that happened to me. So I didn't really know
me, I mean, yeah, you're numb to it after a while, but for me, it's like, it's shocking every time you see